I, Dr. Aparna, welcome you all on behalf of Jaipuria Institute of Management, Jaipur, to the Young Achievers Session 2 on the day 2 of the International Conference, Envisioning India's Future, Growth, Innovation, Sustainability, Happiness and Well-being. The power of any nation lies in the competencies of the youth. They are the face of the nation. They are impulsive and are sensitive. But once they fix their target, there's no coming back. They are humble and kind, but they believe in power and ideologies. They are progressive and have the potential to bring revolution. With their vigor and talent, they build up societies and inspire others to do the same. To reiterate the same, it is a privilege to have our guest for today, Mr. Utkarsh Amitabh, CEO, Network Capital. He is the founder and CEO of Network Capital, one of the world's largest career intelligence communities. Mr. Utkarsh is a business graduate from INSEAD. He is a writer at Harvard Business Review, Chevening Fellow at University of Oxford, and a World Economic Forum Global Shaper who represented the community at the annual meeting in Davos. His new book, The Seductive Illusion of Hard Work, has become a global bestseller. He also writes for Mint, Economic Times, and World Economic Forum. Mr. Utkarsh graduated with an MBA from INSEAD Business School, where he was recognized as the Andy Burgess Scholar for Social Entrepreneurship. He is also the torchbearer of Ashoka University's Young India Fellowship. His work experience includes Microsoft, Harley-Davidson Motor Company, and Teach for India. He is also a Raisin Fellow and the recipient of the INK Fellowship. And Mr. Utkarsh is also a trained actor and played Major Metcalf in one of the world's longest running plays. He loves to travel and has been to more than 80 countries. It is a pleasure having you, Mr. Utkarsh. And as the tradition of Jaipuria, I would request Prabhat sir to please felicitate you with this green certificate. So please.
Great to have you, Utkarsh, on the show. And I'm sure our students are eagerly waiting to hear you, listen from you. And here is a tree planted in your name. And we just had Karan's session. Karan's are the co-founder of Grow Tree, and we are a partner with them. And we have given up on giving bouquet to welcome our guests. So we welcome them by planting a tree. So in your name, the tree has been planted in Sundarban National Park, and there is a geotagging to the tree, so you can track your tree as well if you want. So this is our way of contributing to the sustainability. So thank you. And
this is a very thoughtful gesture. Thank you very much. I trust you. I don't need to check the geotag. Thank you, ma'am, for the very warm and thoughtful introduction. Thank you, sir, once again for this very memorable start to my day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks, Mr. Utkarsh. I think without taking much of the time, as we know that the session talks about the youth. And there are so many questions that the students have already given me, and there would be a few questions which would be coming up in the due course. So starting, the first thing, Utkarsh, that everybody, I believe, wants to know is that how has been your journey so far? And if you can just tell us something about that, from where you started, to what extent you have come, and what really do you see for yourself in future?
Yeah, thanks again, ma'am. To me, the journey has been a series of micro experiments and a series of lessons, both positive and negative. There has been some serendipity, some surprise, but I wouldn't change too much in the process, because what I do essentially for a living now is to provide a platform for people to do what they love, teach what they love, and make a living doing so. And it's the best job that I've ever had. And it's a job that I created for myself by realizing how challenging it is for young people and old people to figure out what they really want to do with their work lives. And I think this process of figuring out is complicated by the kind of words and phrases you hear in the media, like follow your passion, or sit under a tree like Isaac Newton, and one day an apple will fall on your head and you'll discover your passion. The truth is that passion is not found sitting under an apple tree. You need to go out there, really connect with people, reflect with them, conduct micro experiments, and then you figure out what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and essentially what's your reason for being. So in my career, as a tech professional, as an entrepreneur, as a writer, as an actor, as a world traveler, etc., etc. These are not things that I suddenly discovered. These were things that I was sort of interested in. I started conducting micro experiments. And I think that my life, both work life and personal life, became richer through the process. So you were kind enough to read out a fairly, like a fairly long and quasi-impressive bio. But the idea of a bio is challenging. I think bio just captures the highlights. And I think my big realization is that let's look at what's the back of the bio, what's behind the resume. And I'm very interested in exploring that for myself and for millions of others who use network capital, who come to universities and programs like Jaipuria and other organizations that exist. I think the whole relationship that we have with work needs to change. And I want to play a small but meaningful role in changing that.
So, Mr. Amitabh, when we saw that you have been with companies such as the dream companies for many of the students sitting here, like Harley Davidson and Microsoft, and then what really motivated you to be out of it and really starting something of your own? And were there any challenges? What struggles you faced? And mentally, was there any dilemma?
Oh, it was a huge dilemma. So I loved working at Microsoft, and I got to work in Microsoft across the US, Europe, and India on a wide range of projects. I also got a chance to help out the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, and his team work on some projects, one of which was the World Economic Forum in Davos, figuring out what Microsoft should be doing in certain pockets. And it was something that I learned a lot from. I got to travel around the world. I work on complex problems in Microsoft in the time that I was there. Obviously, not thanks just to me, but largely to the leadership of the company. Microsoft stocks 10x'd. It started at, when I joined, it was around $30, and today it's around $350. And I've followed Satya Nadella's journey closely, got a chance to support him in a few projects, and I was really inspired. So things were going really well for me at Microsoft. Along the way, I also started a passion project for mentoring and career advice, which was Network Capital then. And it started growing organically, and students from around the world started joining. But in the middle of the pandemic, I had a decision to take. What do I want to do with my passion project? Do I want to let it be a passion project or make it into a full-fledged community-backed venture? So I said that I will regret not trying. In fact, I've written about it in my latest article for Harvard Business Review on how to make career transitions. And I talk about this journey. And what makes this journey interesting is because there's also a personal angle to it. So I recently got married, and my wife is French Lebanese. She's living in London. So I also wanted to be a global citizen so that she and I can embark upon a new journey together. So when I looked at my personal factors, looked at what I'd regret more professionally, I decided to say goodbye to Microsoft, but still very proud to have worked for the company. And all comes down to, what will you regret more? Would you regret trying and failing? Or would you regret not trying at all? This is a framework that Jeff Bezos popularized. It's called the regret minimization framework. So I definitely would have regretted not trying. And that's why I decided to jump into entrepreneurship full on. And it's been a great journey because it has taught me a lot. Lots of successes, lots of failures. And I'm not a fan of highlights. So this has been a very exploratory, teaching experience for me.
Right. And when I was reading or researching about you, I read somewhere in an article which is written by you, in quotes, I'm saying, hard work helped, but only because they had made wise choices in the first place. I can safely say that the informed and intelligent choices these people made were the real catalysts of success. What made you say this? It's really interesting.
Ma'am, as a society, we love people who work hard. On social media these days, there's a new trend of people really portraying how hard they work, how much they suffer, and how difficult life is. And I think it's absolutely up to people. If they want to show that side of their life, that's perfect. But I think it sends a wrong message. The wrong message being that if you work very hard, success will come to you. This is only partially true. The truth is that if you choose the wrong field, you will not necessarily achieve the kind of success. Look, I am a decently good cricket player, and I'm an okay basketball player. But no matter how hard I work in basketball, I am not really going to achieve the kind of success that will give me the meaning, the purpose that I'm looking for. So what you choose to focus on is really important. It has to be something that you're genuinely interested in, not because your neighbor is doing it or somebody told you this is the hot new thing. And this is something that your natural curiosity and your skills must align to. Everybody cannot succeed in everything. Mark Zuckerberg is not going to be a particularly good basketball player, no matter how smart he is. And Michael Jordan may not be a particularly good coder, no matter how hard he tries. I don't know about Jordan's coding skills, but I'm just giving a metaphor. So people should be wary of these kinds of proclamations that you work hard in anything, you'll achieve success. You will not. So who you choose to work with and what you choose to work on is much more important than the number of hours you work. And this has been true for me at Microsoft. It is true for me in Network Capital. It is true for me in my writing that I do, that the projects that I choose to write on and the projects that I choose to pursue or chose to pursue define my success. Today, if you Google career transition, my Harvard Business Review article literally comes up first. And this was not something that happened by design or I worked particularly hard, because as a young person who's made multiple career transitions across countries, continents, and it has just given me a flavor and made me curious enough to reflect on it in a unique way. I'm not sure I worked any harder than the next person who's enabling career transition, but the choice of problem really helped.
I think you've pinpointed very correctly that choosing maybe making wise choices is very important. So I have one follow-up question here, Mr. Amitabh, and it is not only for the students. I believe it is even for us, for everybody sitting here. What should be the proper nourishment to really be a good decision maker? What do you feel that? What are those feeds that we should be taking for taking correct or the wise decisions, as you're saying?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of thinking from first principles. So, ma'am, usually in schools, etc., students are taught to learn by analogy. And, oh, this phenomena happened this way. Hence, the phenomena that you are trying to pursue will also can be taken parts of it. So, learning from analogy is a useful but incomplete shortcut. Obviously, like suppose you and I have to take a simple decision, like where to buy potatoes from. Like you can just ask me, hey, Utkarsh, like what's the best place for potatoes? Whatever I know, I'll tell you, because it's a low stake decision. So learning by example is a great idea. It's useful there. But most decisions, the high stake decisions, are decisions that need to be taken from first principles. And Elon Musk, who I write about in my first book, The Seductive Illusion of Hard Work, he also has a school for kids called Synthesis. And Network Capital has modeled a similar school focused on first principles for kids around the world as well. And there, Musk talks about the importance of first principles thinking. Somebody asked, how can you build a rocket company, a fintech company, a car company, and like literally an underground transportation company? And he says, because I try and think from first principles, where you try and break down a problem into as simple as possible parts and then reassemble them. So when you want to take a high stake decision, you want to do independent thinking. What's something that you know about a problem or an industry that is an earned secret? And I think this is as true for professors, as true for entrepreneurs, as true for students, as true for basically anyone who has a complex decision to make, because the world is a really confusing place today. If you listen to everybody's advice, you will be left confused. So you need to complement that by giving yourself some advice, which is built up from first principles. So focus on that, focus on mental model, and don't feel the seductive illusion to work hard in something that is fashionable. Your true success is not going to come from mimicking others. Your true success will really need some reflection, some experimentation, and some building up of compounding of skills and networks and so forth.
Absolutely. I think you've made a very vital point that yes, analogies are something which we have really, which are a part of the curriculum always, but yes, everything is not for everyone. So that's a good point that you've made. Mr. Utkarsh, you are also TED Talk speaker. Yes, I just saw one of your videos in which you were talking about many good things. So, but I have a question for you, that which is your favorite TED Talk speaker and why? Whom do you follow?
I've always found ranks and lists very difficult to follow, but I'll tell you a couple of people that we've hosted on Network Capital, and I found their conversations really interesting. So I found hosting Indra Nui, the former CEO of Pepsi, on Network Capital, really inspiring. And she talked about the role of mentorship in her life, how she made career transitions. And that was something that really inspired me. This is on networkcapital.tv. People can check it out. So that has been really inspiring for me. I'm not like particularly interested in politics, but I have to say that Dr. Shashi Tharoor's masterclasses on Network Capital and TED gave me a lot of inspiration that even when one is 60 or 65, one can be inspired to learn more. So I'm not particularly political, but leaving all politics aside, I think his knowledge and the way he's able to bring or synthesize complex ideas into simple one has been fascinating. And I do spend 1/3 of my day learning. So I learn from podcasts, from TED Talks, from all of these kinds of things. And I constantly try and look for the earned secret, which I talked about in the previous question. Like, what's something that the author knows that he has been constructed from first principle? And I try and see how I can build up on top of that. So I do hope that maybe there'll be a TED Talk at Jaipuria one day, and we'll put together a great set of speakers for it.
Absolutely. I think we would definitely navigate this idea, and we are definitely going to have you in person with that format. It would be great for our students.
It'll be a pleasure.
Yeah, yes. I read somewhere that you were also part of the team that built India's first smart village. So what was it all about? What is it all about?
Yeah, so you would have heard about smart cities, where cities are internet powered. There's lots of data collected across all devices and platforms, and there's data exchange, there's data analysis, and hopefully the systems become more intelligent and we're able to build a more efficient, a greener, better city. But nobody talks about smart villages. Now, the truth is that in India, where I think almost all listeners are from, we come from a country where more than 70% of people live in villages. So it's good to talk about smart cities, but we shouldn't forget villages in the process. So Microsoft and government of Maharashtra and a few other organizations decided to construct a blueprint for creating and scaling smart villages across India. And I was one of the people who helped create that strategy and partially implement that strategy in a place called Harisal in Maharashtra. So Harisal was once called the epicenter of malnutrition and AIDS. So if you look at the development indices in that particular village, it were really challenging. Infant mortality, maternal mortality, things were really challenging in the village. So instead of throwing technology at the problem, the first step was to really understand what the problem was. And what can you do to make technology enable people to live better lives than they were living today? So we started working together in that team and tried to implement the blueprint that we had constructed. And there were lots of challenges along the way. For example, getting internet to Harisal required a whole bunch of policy and tech innovations, and then getting the acceptance of people. And then once you bring the internet, Indians are really smart individuals. We are innovators. So a lot of new micro innovations came to fore in the village. Our goal was to try and provide the infrastructure layer and enable people to build solutions that they cared most about. So I've been to Harisal a few times, and every time I've gone there, I've been just amazed by how much technology, if implemented the right way by the people that it hopes to affect, can create a change. Harisal should not be looked at as, Harisal is not New York, obviously, but it has become much better than what it started off. All change begins with micro steps. This is another point that I constantly make on network capital and in my writing. All change is incremental. Compounding does its wonders. I do feel reasonably confident that Indian villages with the right approach can become hubs of innovation in the times to come. So really looking forward to a time when that can take place.
Great, great. Wonderful listening to this whole idea. Because you're from this generation and you would also be relying heavily on social media. So, Mr. Utkarsh, I have a question from that. Do you feel that this ever-increasing usage of social media, is it really taking the youth to the path of light or darkness? What is your take on this? And this question, I would tell you that it has come from a student, that this so heavy reliance on social media, do you really feel that it is good, or it is maybe hampering the innovation or the thinking process? What is your take on it?
Yeah. My next book is coming out in June. It's called Passion Economy and the Side Hustle Revolution. So I told you Network Capital's dream is to enable everyone to do what they love and teach what they love. And in the book, I talk about how millennials and Gen Zs, like how people in our generation, are trying to reinvent what their work life means to them. And personally, I would like to propose that there should be a course called Passion Economy in Jaipuria's management programs. It's so important that people really understand how social media and creator tools will lead to new ways of employment and growth. But that is not the complete story, which is why I think the student asked the question. Sometimes when you're feeling low, or you're locked down, or you're just bored, or you're nervous, you end up doom scrolling. Just keep scrolling, hoping for something to happen. So these technologies many of these products are designed to hook you onto them, to almost make you addicted. But these same tools also allow you to make a reasonable living on your terms, doing that. For example, let's take Facebook, which is called Meta now. So when Network Capital was a passion project, I started out as a simple Facebook group that allowed me to do a lot of experimentations on what should Network Capital's final tech product look like. But I didn't have the resources to build the Network Capital TV website, build Network Capital app, do all the experiments, because I had a huge student loan. It was a passion project then. So the Facebook group really helped me figure out what should be my expansion plan. And just last year, it happened that Facebook actually funded Network Capital. So it has played a pretty meaningful role in the early stages of the company. And the same Facebook, on which sometimes I did spend many hours just posting about wonderful vacation pictures, like all of us do, is also a platform that enabled me to build my next career after I left Microsoft. So to a certain extent, what we do with social media is up to us. To a certain extent, it is a function of our choices. But I don't want to say that it's only a function of our choices. I do feel that the tech companies, policymakers, and all of us need to make ourselves clear that we don't want products that hook us up or that addict us. There should be products that allow you to take digital breaks. So I remember meeting Ariana Huffington once in Davos, and she was launching in India, and she wanted to partner with Network Capital. And she said that, you should actually take lots of guilt-free breaks from technology. It should not be something that comes with any amount of fear of missing out. And the term struck with me. And I've tried to take guilt-free breaks from technology. I've not done a particularly good job of it, by the way. So even last night, my publisher asked me for a bunch of details, and I was up at 3:30 a.m. finishing some work. And then after that, I just decided to go on Instagram and check out some videos. Complete waste of time, probably inhibited my sleep, even though I have to be here in the morning. But like that happened. So I'm not saying it from the point of view that I have mastered the world or I've conquered the optimum use of technology, but I am somebody who's benefited a lot from using the tools appropriately. And my thesis is that in 2021 and beyond, 2022 and beyond, these creator tools will become a very important source of employment, both in the passion economy and in the corporate world. Because what is happening is that the corporate world is trying to absorb elements of creator economy, because now the same millennials are saying, you know what, this corporate life doesn't work for me anymore. And you don't need to look anywhere, but look at this, your colleague from University of Texas, Austin. He came up with a term called Great Resignation. Millions of people from around the world have resigned because they say, I don't want this life. This doesn't work for me. So it's this great amalgamation that's going on as we speak as well.
Right. I've picked up a beautiful phrase from you, guilt-free breaks. And I think the students sitting and attending the webinar would really listen to this, that yes, taking guilt-free breaks from social media is not a bad option. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So one more question of Utkarshji, because you have seen so much in life. You have to see a lot more. You have to really rise very high. But can you say that your life has witnessed both growth and well-being, and do they really coexist? Why am I bringing this question? Because the theme of our conference is all about well-being and happiness. So are you okay with the fact that yes, profit and maybe purpose both coexist together? What are your thoughts on this?
Ma'am, I absolutely believe that profit, purpose, and well-being need to coexist. In my life, one of my greatest thrills of life is not my CV. My greatest thrills of my life is my family, my circle of friends, my mentors, my adventures, my experiences, the coffee that I'm having, while speaking with you. These are the things that really give me joy. And I really mean that. I'm not talking as some spiritual guru or anything. Like, these are the things that form the deep experiences for. This is why we do what we do. My mission in life is to enable people to do what they love and teach what they love. I really feel that everyone's economic and mental well-being comes from doing what they really care about. The challenge was that in the previous generation, I think it was taught that you need to suffer in life up till 55, 60, then you retire. And then you'll finally get to a place of stability and happiness. And I think that is changing completely. Now people live much longer on average. People change their careers much more often. Industries get disrupted. The companies that were doing so well in 2000 don't even exist today. If you look at 1960s, 70s, barely 5-10 companies are relevant in today's world. And this great disruption is the norm. And the essence of reinvention, or changing from, say, Microsoft to Network Capital, or going on from becoming a trader to a writer, or becoming a stand-up comic after you were a hedge fund manager in Hong Kong. These are all real examples of people that I've seen. You can't do that if you're not taking good care of your body and your mind. Because you need to reinvent yourself multiple times. It's the most important skill, and there is no prescription for it. Nobody will come and teach you the steps for it. So there needs to be a sense of adventure, a possibility, and the resilience to fight back when things go bad, because things will go bad. Sometimes people will talk behind your back. Sometimes you'll be witness to rumors and gossips. Sometimes you will lose friendships. Sometimes you will, you will lose a job. Sometimes you can, lose your loved ones. All of these things are part of life. But I think the whole role of philosophy and having a worldview about things is to make sense of why we're doing what we're doing. That is why in our school that we have, we do teach philosophical elements as well, so that people can really understand, hey, why am I working so hard? What's this all about? Then there is at least one answer that they can explore and find.
Right. So you just talked about that you can lose on relationships, you will lose friends sometimes. There would be days that when you would be depressed because of things. So how do you handle all this, Mr. Utkarsh? And I think the students sitting here and who are attending, definitely there are days where they feel a lot of anxiety. They have the fear of
Yeah.
losing people around them. They are maybe a part of the group because they don't want to lose that as feeling of association, maybe knowing that the group is not doing what is correct or ethical, but still they are a part of it. So how do
Yeah.
you see all these things, and what is your message for them to handle all such things, which the dilemma which is going in their mind?
Yeah. Let's tackle this question from first principles. I'll again go back to things that I've written in my book on network habit. The first is loss aversion. So Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate, with his friend Amor Tversky, did a bunch of these experiments with that. What do people really fear? What do the people mostly care about? Do they fear losing what they have, or do they, prioritize gains over that? So almost all of us fear losing what we have a lot more than gaining almost twice of what they would. They call this loss aversion, which is something that all of us should keep in mind. That on average, a lot of us are loss averse. We don't want to lose the prestige we have, the status that we have. If we were good students in school, we don't want to lose the tag that comes with being a good student. If we had a good careers, we never want to lose that, whatever we have. But losses will happen. This is life. Being okay that losses will be regular and losses are part of life, and having some amount of dispassionate, attachment, if that's the way to look at it, is going to be important. Because, the stronger you get attached to things that you can't influence, the more miserable your life becomes. The essence of Stoic philosophy is to focus on things you can control and ignore everything else. Right now, what I can control is to have a meaningful and a purposeful conversation with you. There's really nothing else in my control. So I can worry about, all the million things that are challenging in my life, but that won't change the million things. What I can influence is this hour right now. And it's very easy to say this. It's really difficult to do this. And all of us should try and keep this perspective in mind, that loss aversion is our nature. We will lose things and we will have to bounce back. What's been useful to me has been relationships. So I'm not somebody who, I wish I talked about my challenges as openly as I talk about my, my mini triumphs. I try, I've become slightly better at it, but on average, I talk about things that have gone well for me a lot more than I talk about things that have not gone well for me. But I do have really solid relationships with people that I can talk to. There are few, but that has been really helpful. Reading has been really helpful. And so has just keeping some basic principles of philosophy and business in mind. So you talked about the TED Talk, my favorite TED Talk. We have a public speaking fellowship on Network Capital. And when I was researching that, I realized that Warren Buffett, the most famous investor that we all know, said that the best investment that he's ever made is in public speaking, one class that he took with Dale Carnegie. And that sort of changed his life around. Just knowing all of this, looking at inspiration from different pockets, can sometimes be helpful as well.
Absolutely wonderful. I think that you've really ignited few things which were latent and implicit in us. But yes, we never think in that ways that yes, losing the version is a part and parcel of our life. So that needs to be taken in that stride. So Mr.
Yeah,
Utkarsh, here I would like to take up the questions now from the attendees, which has come in the chat box, if you allow me.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the students, Saket, is asking that the modern youth has been showing the continuous trend of increased interest in working and settling in foreign countries. Why is it so? And I would add up, do you feel that there can be something which can really curb this issue?
Yeah. The question is pertinent. Satya Nadella, Indra Nooyi, Sundar Pichai, a whole bunch of writers um, live abroad. But that's also changing because a lot of people are now inventing stuff, writing stuff in India. In the startup space, but I think people talk about startups a bit too much, but also in other spaces, social scientists, literature, development professionals, because India is a really interesting country. India hasn't figured everything out. We're still sort of a middle income-ish country, just about. We have many challenges, many opportunities. And I do feel that a lot of people can now stay in India and solve problems for India, but also for the world. One of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that we are a lot more interdependent than independent. So this whole notion of you work only for your country and you live only in your country is changing. Now people work on the internet. They are citizens of their country and citizens of the internet. People now want to work from anywhere. I have been to 82 countries. Not all of this has been for vacation. Almost actually 90% of the 82 or 84 countries that I've been to has been for work. I've also traveled a bit around, but I think this work-life harmony around the world has one taught me a lot more. Has made my personal life a lot more interesting and given me a flavor that gives a lot of meaning to my life. I don't think we should try and create students and young professionals that are nationalistic. I think people or students should be patriots. And the difference between patriotism and nationalism is that patriots say, I love my country. I absolutely do. I love India. I love working for India. But a nationalist said, I only love my country. I am not a nationalist. I'm absolutely a patriot. And I hope all of you find a lot more attraction towards patriotism than nationalism. Patriotism is focused on love. Nationalism is focused on comparison. And comparison leads to suffering, love leads to growth. So you should absolutely play a meaningful role in helping India grow and helping others who can learn from India and gain from India grow alongside. Everything that you learn, perhaps in your management classes, game theory, the Nash equilibrium, all of these interesting ideas are primarily focused on creating a win-win for people. In your negotiation classes that you'll run, what is the central lesson of negotiation? The best negotiations are ones where both you and the person you're negotiating with feel that they've won or created an optimal outcome. And I think that's what you need to strive for. Live anywhere, work anywhere. Hopefully in India, there are lots of opportunities, but help to create a better outcome for India and for the world. Big lesson from the pandemic, and I think it'll stay for a while.
Right. I think now, when you're saying this, even I'm feeling that yes, the trend is definitely going to change, and it has already started changing because you just mentioned about the great resignation, which is happening because the people now in the pandemic have realized that this is not they are meant for. Maybe they have their own ways and wishes. Right. So we have another question, Mr. Utkarsh, and it says that if you were the young generation of 2022 who has recently witnessed this COVID pandemic, what would be your take on your future goals and ambitions? Would they have been impended because after seeing this pandemic, or you would have stood strong with your thoughts?
Well, I am a part of the young generation who is quite impacted by the pandemic, both positively to some extent and negatively to a very large extent, like all of us. I've lost family members, I've lost friends along the process. But yeah, in the pandemic, I did publish a book. I did move countries. I did, leave corporate for entrepreneurship. I wrote extensively. I did feel on occasion quite a bit of uncertainty and anxiety, again, like all of us. And I'm still living to fight for another day. I don't know whether at the end of the day it'll be all, sunny and beautiful, or I don't know whether it'll be, not so sunny and not so beautiful. Not knowing is part of the adventure. What I do want to do is to try with first principles, and try keeping whatever I can do in mind. I don't believe that I can do anything anywhere, but I do know that there is one superpower that I have, and I know you have. And if we spend a life finding a few things that we really care about and are interested in, it'll perhaps add to meaning. It'll probably make us financially sustainable, and it'll probably lead to an interesting life. Hopefully, it'll be much more, but I think this is a pretty reasonable goal to set forward. So, I've met many people who've had exemplary results in different fields. And usually I notice that they're not so obsessed with the goal that they are most popular for. They'll enjoy the pursuit more than the metric. So if we can learn one thing from people who've had exceptional achievement over a very, very long time, it is that let's enjoy the pursuit a lot more than metric. Because the moment you become metric driven, right? The moment you start comparing yourself, this leads to envy. And envy is a deadly sin. Envy is very hard to overcome, but envy is also a fact of life. I write about everything that drives my curiosity. So envy is also an article I wrote for Harvard Business Review and Mint. And I don't know a human being on earth who's not experienced envy. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, who I talked about 10 minutes back, he talked of feeling envious of his friend and longtime collaborator, Amor Tversky. Because Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, thought that he was in the shadow and all the limelight went to Tversky. So if people like that feel envy, you and I, it's okay to feel that. But envy will lead to suffering, for sure. So keep this fact in mind, enjoy the pursuit as much as you can. If you're not enjoying the pursuit, it's more of a selection problem, not a capability problem.
Very good. I think you've really made a very good point here. And we assume that you would have stood strong with your commitments and your motivations, whether it is pandemic or whatever it is. So I think the question is answered. We have another question from Ms. Anushka Agnihotri, and she has a long question. So please allow me to ask that. Good evening, sir. My question is relatable to many of the students sitting here. It is that you have experienced so much success, whether it be working in Microsoft or being the founder of Network Capital. You must have gone through situations where there is dilemma between following head or heart. So can you please enlighten us on how to deal with such situations, whether to follow head or heart, and how to get the right balance of head and heart in our decisions? Thanks for this question, Anushka. Over to you, Amitabhji, for this.
Yeah, thank you. So when I decided to leave Microsoft and make Network Capital my passion project, it was a combination of head and heart. Because what I had done was that over the past few years, I had built a passion project, which was reasonably popular, which had a sort of a business model in place. I had written about it extensively, and I knew I brought it up to a certain level where it could take its own color and shape in the years to come. What I didn't do was that the moment I got the idea of Network Capital, I left my job, I ran and followed my passion instantly. For somebody, that could have been the right choice. For me, it wasn't, because I had just finished my MBA from INSEAD and Wharton. Like, it was a joint program. So I'd spent a lot of money and time in France and in the US. I had to pay back an education loan of upwards of $200,000, which in Indian rupees is 1.5 crores. And I did meet with an accident as well. when I was in like towards my end of my Wharton term. So there was a period where I had graduated, but I was in the hospital recovering from that accident. Finally I was fit and I was able to join Microsoft. But even though I always wanted to start Network Capital, I didn't instantly quit Microsoft, forgot about the 1.5 crore loan that I have, and then suddenly jumped in the process. That was what my heart was telling me to do. So I said, heart, occasionally you can be getting different ideas, but let's really validate, do you really love this? Do you have the skills, capabilities to do this? Do you have the mental toughness to go through the days, which will be challenging? And this was a time that I took to figure out what matters most to me and why. And I did learn quite a lot at Microsoft as well, through a wide range of projects. And I apply a lot of those lessons on Network Capital. I got to work with the CEO, the president of Microsoft. Many of them have come and written for Network Capital, taught in Network Capital. So it became a really interesting ecosystem. But it was all about combining the head and the heart and using experiments to make sense of life. Because nobody can tell me whether I should have quit Microsoft after 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or never. Nobody else could have told me what is the right time to do this. And nobody else could tell me about things that essentially I need to figure out myself. But the challenge is that since all of us have been told to follow our passion, we misunderstand it is that follow is more experimentative than prescriptive. So as you try and make sense of your work life and your head and heart balance, you should really do micro experiments. If you're confused whether you should join the IT sector or manufacturing sector, you should do a weekend sprint in both sectors. In fact, but that's one of the key products that we have on Network Capital, where we allow people to really experience careers in different spaces. And when you do it, then you'll know, okay, you know what? I like none of them. I actually want to build a career in media, because that's where my true calling is, and you should do it. But the key is to get on to doing low risk experiments as opposed to sitting under an apple tree, thinking of Isaac Newton and waiting for the apple to fall on your head. Apple is not falling on your head. The apple actually did not even fall on Newton's head. I know this may come as a surprise to you, but this story of Isaac Newton sitting under a tree and the apple falling on his head and he discovering gravity is apocryphal. This did not happen. But stories are memorable and we tell it just to highlight the power of adventure and possibility. But yeah, it's a completely made up story.
Okay, so in a nutshell, you would give a lot of importance to the head because maybe it is having all those properties which the heart is missing on, is it?
No, I think the heart is always as important, if not more, than the head. But I think that both the head and the heart can be misled or can go in the right direction. When the head is misled, we call this a cognitive bias. When the heart is misled, we call this an unrestrained adventure. I'm all for unrestrained adventure, and I know cognitive biases are part of life. Just being aware of it and doing experiments will help you find the right balance. Because some people know what they want to do with their life at the age of 3 or 10 or 15, but 99% of people are not like that.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they're not good or not smart. They're probably as smart, if not smarter. It's just that they are still figuring things out. And if you have multiple forces pulling you in multiple directions, it's important that you're aware of it. And don't think of yourself, oh, is there something wrong with me? No, there isn't. You just made up like 99% of us are.
Right. Thank you so much. I think though there are a lot of questions and comments, but because of the paucity of time, I think I would like you now to just conclude in a nutshell that what is the message that you would like to give to the audience which is sitting and to the youth which is attending? Maybe any 2-3 pinpointed message or key takeaways that you would want them to be on.
Sure. Let me give 3 short takeaways. Hopefully it'll be useful for the students, the professors, and other people listening. First is that what you will do in 2030 will look very, 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 very different from what you think you will be doing in 2030 today. Think about it. Just ask yourself 10 years back, did you look, think, feel, prioritize the things that you feel, prioritize, and look today? No, right? This change is going to accelerate. 90% of jobs of 2030 don't exist today. Nobody can tell you what jobs will exist. They can give you a flavor, but essentially you need to figure out yourself. So keep that in mind. 2030 will feel and look radically different. Second thing, remember, the most important skill, the single most important skill that you need to focus on is on reinventing yourself. Because the sectors, the industries, the focus, the world will look radically different. And if you stay the same, if you don't evolve, you will find it very hard to make sense of your work life and your personal life. And the third thing you should keep in mind is that you cannot reinvent yourself alone. You can't go to a library and read 10 books on reinvention and expect that you would have reinvented it. You need a community. Again, for your university or college like Jaipuria, one of the really important things that it provides is a community of professors and teachers and administrators and other people, and you all are part of it. On digital platforms, initially, that was a big struggle. How do you really build a community which never sees each other, never meets? Hopefully that will change now. But you need the help of a community to reinvent yourself so that you're ready for 2030. A 2030 which will be full of adventures, surprises, both positive and negative. A 2030 that lots of people confidently predict that they know everything about, but nobody really knows. You have to figure this out together with the help of your college, with the help of networks that you're part of, with the help of careers that you want to create. And personally, I am really looking forward to that kind of future. The person who will be able to derive most happiness and meaning in 2030 will typically be a person who reflects on the present and the past and the future with a lot of intention. So community, reinvention, and 2030 looking radically different. 3 things will perhaps help your work life a bit more.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Utkarsh. I think you have really set an example for the youth, and you are a great source of inspiration, for which we at Jaipuria Jaipur intend to felicitate you with this. This is a token of appreciation maybe from our side. I request Prabhat sir to please confer this to Utkarsh ji.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and it's a privilege to confer this Young Achiever Award to Utkarsh Amitabh ji. And please accept it from our side. It's a humble token of appreciation that we can do for you.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity and the first of many such discussions to come. Thank you very much to the faculty, to the leaders,